Hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us in the Right Now studio. It is 9 a.m. Right now, new federal rules are in effect for CalFresh recipients. Starting today, about 13,000 San Diegans will lose access to food benefits. We're going to be talking with Tori Apodaca in just a second, but thank you for being with us this morning. I'm meteorologist Evan Narani, in for Chris Crow this morning. How's it going, Jack?
It's going great. You are the next guest host this week. We had Eric yesterday. We had Netta on Monday. We have Vanessa tomorrow.
That's right. So it's going to be our first time with you.
All of the morning crew is getting a chance to try out the Right Now studio. I can't remember, and I'm not sure if you remember either, whether we did a bunch of test shows prior to our official launch. Because this studio that you see right here, and let me get you a look at it. We like to go to this shot every once in a while. You see all the waving and all that. This was new. Just a few months ago. So we really had to get comfortable with all of the equipment in here, get used to a completely different way of communicating the news to, for us at least, the more streaming centric platform, a little less formal, a little more conversational. But you had some great conversations with Jeff Sevely.
That was awesome.
Bringing up his career, his upbringing, how he got to be, the face of the Zevely zone here in San Diego, and it took him some really interesting places. He had a great story about how he met his wife. They were they were work rivals, So just some really great stories, and that's kind of the thing we try to capture here.
That's the funniest thing is this transition. While we're in the studio on a typical news day, every second is so strictly planned. A lot of people don't know when we're in the studio during a typical show. We have people in our ear that are wrapping us, that are telling us when to talk, about how much time we have. So being able to talk a little bit more freely, more comfortably in this environment with as few kind of time constraints as we typically have on the air is really comforting. It feels very good. So nice to be here with you at 9 a.m.
And to add on to your point, that means that some of the stories that we see on our televisions, on our traditional newscasts, we can talk about here too, and we can bring in those same reporters who do that. And as you mentioned, that's exactly what we're going to do today to start off this show. If you have been paying attention this week, CalFresh has been a really big story. As you mentioned, about 13,000 San Diegans are set to lose their health benefits today. These are due to some big changes in federal food stamps and how states interact with them. Tori Apodaca has been outside feeding San Diego all morning. She's been doing all the reporting on this for our morning shows. She's actually going to join us here live. But first, let's take a look at her story, and then we'll have her on the other side of her report.
That's exactly right. They really are expecting to see such a surge, kind of similar to what we saw last fall during the government shutdown, when those SNAP food benefits, also known as CalFresh here in California, were partially put on pause. Well, now this change is going to impact many legal immigrants, including asylum seekers and refugees, who will lose access to these benefits. The change is all tied to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that cuts spending to the federally funded food assistance program. Bridge of Hope and Feeding San Diego are two local food banks who feed tens of millions each year. They say that there are no questions asked when you show up to get food. All are welcome. The food banks have been preparing for this change since the bill passed, but say they still need the support of the community.
We're told every day from people that they don't know what they would do without this food.
It doesn't make it any easier to know that there's going to be about 13,000 people in San Diego County that aren't going to be able to access their CalFresh benefit.
So local farms are also stepping up to make sure no one goes hungry. Coastal Roots Farm in Encinitas grows 80,000 pounds of fresh food a year and tells us that it plans to put more food in its free donations for marginalized communities. And this is really just the first phase of restrictions on federal food assistance. Starting on June 1st, anyone ages 18 to 64 will need to show proof that they have a job, are volunteering, or training for a job at least 80 hours a month in order to receive these benefits. Reporting in San Diego, Tori Apodaca, News 8.
Apodaca's story from earlier today. We are now joined by Tori herself. Tori, good morning. How's it going?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here this morning.
Of course. We're so happy to have you on the show because, like we talked about a little earlier, I mean, with a lot of these news stories, you kind of get, the quick minute 30 or so for people to get the quick headline. But this gives us an opportunity to be able to break it down a little bit more so people understand it. I mean, I imagine that this is a headline that a lot of people across San Diego are affected by. We know how many people receive those food benefits and rely on them so heavily. What have you heard about those changes that could be made as a result of HR 1?
Yeah, kind of like how I noted in that story, it's really going to be impacting just so many in this community between legal immigrants, asylum seekers, refugees. About 13,000 San Diegans is the number we're looking at that rely on these CalFresh food benefits. But we've known about this coming. The food banks have been kind of preparing for this since it passed back in July of last year, and have just been kind of bracing for the surge. I know we saw something similar actually last fall during the government shutdown. That really impacted a lot of long lines when those CalFresh SNAP benefits. I kind of say them hand in hand. They're known as SNAP benefits nationwide. Here in California, they're CalFresh. But when those CalFresh benefits, they were kind of partially put on pause and people were in limbo. I feel like something else to note during that time, it was pretty remarkable seeing how communities were coming together and stepping up. So I'm kind of curious to see how San Diegans are going to respond with what is now going to be happening starting today.
Yeah, you mentioned trying to see what is going to happen. And I think that's one of the big questions that I know we've been asking ourselves because that's the thing. It's not something to where if you already have SNAP benefits, these changes are going to happen today, right? Some people aren't going to feel this for a little bit. Isn't that right?
Yeah. It'll take that time to kick in, even though it goes into effect today. And then this is kind of just the first phase of it when it comes to the federal cuts, because then starting June 1st, there's going to be even more requirements for receiving the benefits.
And I feel like that's what a lot of people get really concerned about is just the uncertainty of not knowing what it means for their benefits. Tori, you mentioned how the community has had to sort of have a reaction to this because of the potential changes. A lot of our local food banks and food rescue organizations are kind of coming together now to try to figure out how to respond. Does this mean that they'll have to be prepared for an uptick in people coming to their organizations? What have you heard about those other spots around San Diego that may have to prepare for more and more people needing their help?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to come down to, having that higher demand. That means they're going to need A, more food, and B, more volunteers to be able to serve all the people. So I'm sure down the line we might see, more of those big pushes to get more volunteers and to get more hands and people on the ground just doing the day-to-day jobs, because it takes a lot for these food distribution places. I don't know if you guys have ever volunteered at one or walked through one, but there's a lot of helping hands and a lot that happens behind the scenes, even before it gets to the actual food bank. So it's definitely a very big feat, and knowing that there's going to be potentially incredibly long lines and just an even bigger need for folks, it'll be interesting to see.
I think, Evan, I think you mentioned it, but I know it's one of the things that everyone has been talking about is just, some of these changes that we're seeing, especially the ones that we're going to see later on down the year, are a little bit technical. It's not necessarily it's a massive change in impact, but it doesn't necessarily look like it on paper sometimes because it's all of these minute changes. In terms of communication, you were outside feeding San Diego in your story this morning. Were there any signs around saying that these are changes that are going in? Are you seeing any, what's the communication of these changes that you're seeing?
I personally did not notice any type of signage or messaging in that sense. I think on social media, there might be some things that some of the different food distribution places are probably starting to push out. I know us here at the news have been heavily covering it, trying to get the messaging out to people as best we can, because I think oftentimes these are those types of situations that unless you are dependent on SNAP food benefits, you likely don't know about this.
Mm-hmm. I also think that something that I was talking about yesterday was just, Tori, you've covered the rise in gas prices, the rise in the cost of living. I mean, these are all factors that already I think people are putting their budgets together and trying to figure out where they can scrap together enough money to pay for food or to pay for gas. So it seems like it's coming at a time where people are needing it the most, and where you were out there in front of the gas stations just a couple days ago covering just how expensive gas is. So I imagine it can feel overwhelming for a lot of the people that you've talked to about just how they're going to come up with the money for anything at this point.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely just really overwhelming for a lot of people right now. And they kind of feel like their hands are tied, like they have no choice, especially when it comes to things like gas prices, putting food on the table. Those are types of things they need. If they have to get to work, they're going to have to, commute there, whether that be by car. Maybe they're going to be pinching pennies in other ways. They're not going to be spending as much on going out to eat or extra activities for their kids or whatever it might be. I think people are going to have to really revisit how they're budgeting.
I know last month that we spoke to a local economics professor, and they said, I can't remember the exact trade-off, but it was like for every 1 cent of the average gas price that goes up, you can equate that to millions of dollars that's taken out of the local economy. So like that goes to your point of just how it really is just a perfect recipe of some of these different economic factors that are just tightening the purse strings.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, is that we think of this as one story, but like you mentioned, the trickle down effects then are that we have so many local businesses and so many local restaurants and establishments that also rely on community members to support them. So when people are having to stretch themselves thin with gas prices, with the food that they're getting from these benefits, I mean, they probably will then decide to go out to eat a little less, maybe to drive a little less. So that means less, supporting of other businesses. So it's all things that I feel like kind of drag down the local economy. Also, of course, have that impact on just families in general that don't have the opportunity to go and try these things, going out to eat at a restaurant or going to an amusement park or a movie theater. Families are at this point, I think, kind of doing a lot more of the budgeting that maybe they didn't have to do in past years.
Yeah, and especially for those who, those are people who do and don't rely on these SNAP benefits. So you see that aided weight on there. Tori, we'll ask you one more question before we let you go. We know that this is something that you're covering in the midday as well. Is there anyone that you're speaking to later today? Is there anything you're looking forward to seeing? You said that you weren't going to stay, or you're at least thinking about not staying at Feeding San Diego for your midday shows. What do you have in store later on in our upcoming broadcasts?
That's right. I'm in my car office right now waiting to go into the YMCA. We're here in San Diego at the Jackie Robinson Family YMCA location, where they usually do have on the first Wednesday of the month food distribution here. So we're hoping to check that out, hopefully be able to talk with some folks just to get a better understanding of how they're doing, whether they are reliant on SNAP food benefits or maybe they aren't. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk with the people out here. That's really just what we would like to bring to you guys.
All right, Tori Apodaca, thanks for staying on top of that out in the field. She's talking to the people who are receiving those benefits, talking to the people who are providing those, food for the people who need it from those local food banks. So you've been on top of the story, and you'll continue to be. We appreciate you staying there. Jack, just for reference, I thought it was interesting, the changes that we see, a lot of them coming for what they call able-bodied adults without dependents. So a lot of those changes are going to come to people who have to now meet certain work requirements. It all is, of course, part of that House resolution that was passed, but I think that's interesting that during the time when that passed, a lot of people were wondering what this would mean. Would people start to lose their benefits? When would people start to lose their benefits? This is the response to that bill that a lot of people were talking about
the big
months
beautiful
and
bill
months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, the big beautiful bill. So I think it's important to recognize, because I'm sure there are people saying, how did this happen? How did it lead up to this? What happened? I mean, that was something that was going through debate months and months ago that passed, and people said at the time this could potentially change benefits for a lot of Americans. This is now the time that able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABAWDs, will have to meet those certain requirements, engagement requirements, to keep benefits for more than 3 months in a 36-month period. So it's going to require them to meet those criteria.
And we had a conversation, Eric and I did, with Feeding San Diego and a representative from Feeding San Diego, and what they told us and some of those changes for what qualifies as an able-bodied adult, that is something that has changed. So, for example, if you are yesterday, if you were 54 years old or older, you were able to receive these benefits without meeting any sort of work requirement. So, if you are a 63-year-old person right now and you have your benefits that you need to renew, yesterday you would not need to meet those work requirements. Today you do. That's just one of the changes that we're seeing. Parents who have a 15-year-old, yesterday they were exempt from it. Today they are not. That limit went from 18 to 14. And this is, there is a belief that there's certain benefits programs that people think that they need to work the requirements of it. Whereas, and a lot of this has to do with, healthcare as well. Healthcare is another government benefit that we see these kind of conversations from, where it is, we want to make sure that you are contributing to the economy, you are contributing before we are going to, allocate these funds for you. And these are some of the things that are really broadening what it means to be that sort of able-bodied adult. And that's going to be what people have to consider. But when the next time they, renew for some of these benefits that they may not otherwise be qualified for starting today.
And that's what, President Trump ran on, was this whole idea of shrinking the size of the federal government, people not being able to necessarily take advantage of the system, as he put it, like they used to. He ran on this campaign of, there are tons and tons of people who are quote unquote freeloading off of, the government. And part of his big, beautiful bill was to address the response that he says his constituents and the people who voted for him wanted to see, which was, addressing the just unlimited amount of money that certain people were getting. So part of that change will constitute as people now having to go apply for jobs that previously felt like the government was able to give them what they needed to, meet all their needs. I think that that's another interesting conversation, and almost a philosophical conversation of what does the government provide?
Oh, yeah.
What's the government supposed to provide? And, it's very interesting to see in theory versus in practice how that works, because we mentioned how everything's getting more expensive for us. It's also getting more expensive for the government to be able to provide those resources to people. So at what point does the government say, we're not a government that's going to provide these resources to our people unless you meet these criteria, unless you're applying for jobs, unless you're working 20 hours a week. So it's an interesting conversation that I think will probably continue to evolve in the coming months and years ahead, of what that means for anyone in America as to whether or not you'll be able to receive those benefits. Today it might be the conversation about food, but who knows when that conversation could come up about, like you said, healthcare, about retirement, all the things that the government provides to people that they say is just part of living in America.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. And something on that work thing, when we spoke to Allison from
That's right.
From Feeding San Diego, work, of course, is one of the things that you can do to meet those requirements. You said 20 hours a week. It is either 20 hours a week or 80 hours on average a month. One of the great things one of the things that they're hoping to perhaps capitalize on is the fact that there might need a bigger influx. They might need more volunteers. Volunteer service counts towards that. So that was one of the things that they were talking about is, if that is something that you need to do, this could be an opportunity to build the community further. They were talking about opening a new facility. They were talking about all the different ways in which they're getting all of this food. They get it from a bunch of different grocery stores like Trader Joe's. Yeah, which it is something that perhaps maybe it's not something you think about in your day-to-day life. One of the points that I made yesterday was oftentimes you just feel so detached from a growing economy, a more diverse, complex economy, to where, you see the milk in the store, you forget where it comes from, you forget where it goes if no one else gets it. And it's great to see that there are organizations like this that take care of it, because these are those kinds of situations where that's something you want to see. And being able to get food at that scale to give out to people.
They started tying in that phrase food rescue organization into their title, which I think does encapsulate so much of it. It was a law that passed in the state of California that said that you can't let food go to waste at local grocery stores, at local restaurants, just because of the, number one, wasteful habits of it. You're just tossing food in the trash, because not only does that take food away from people, but it also then rots and releases methane and does awful things to the environment. So that was a bill that was passed in the state of California that said that California grocery stores, restaurants, all had to donate that food in some way. They make it really easy, Feeding San Diego. You quite literally can go onto an app and mark what you have available for one of those rescuers to go pick up. I did a ride along years ago with one of the volunteers who drives the truck and literally pulls up to local grocery stores that mark it on the app. He walks in, walks to the back, the side that we don't see at the grocery store, and there's someone there ready to give him fresh milk, fresh avocados, lemons, all that kind of stuff that then he takes directly to Feeding San Diego. And it's interesting because we even made a stop at the San Diego Zoo. There was a catered event that was happening, a huge event, and they said, "Hey, we've got leftover food that is otherwise going to go to waste. We don't know what to do with it. Can you come get it?" I mean, that's where those volunteers, like you mentioned, come into play. Feeding San Diego otherwise would have to pay these people to make those trips day to day. And, they then have to pay for the gas, pay for the mileage, pay for the vehicles. So having people who are able to volunteer and say, "Hey, give me a 4-hour shift, give me an 8-hour shift. All I'm going to do is drive around and see who on the app has marked, food that's available." It's so much of a relief compared to Feeding San Diego having to purchase all of that food from wholesale productions.
Yeah, and you mentioned that cost thing, because there's also changes coming in October. 3 phases. We got today, which has to deal with certain legal immigrants. We have one that deals to all recipients, and then we have one that deals with the administrators of the benefits. So typically this has usually been a 50-50 split. The federal government pays for half of it. The state pays for the other half. Here in California, it's technically a 50-35-15, meaning 50% of it is paid by the federal government, 35% by the state, 15% by the county. But that's going to change. Those splits are going to be 25-75, meaning the federal government will only pay a quarter of the fees necessary, and then that 75 will have a similar split between the state and the county. So, those ideas of minimizing costs are something that's going to be a challenge for state leaders and local leaders going forward, because California is already dealing with a budget deficit, with a budget deficit. San Diego County is dealing with a budget deficit. And these are the challenges that we are reporting on and our teams are reporting on constantly. Parking is a major aspect we're seeing a part of this greater conversation. So that is going to be something that people take into account in the decisions that are made here for the next few months, the next few years.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that also then plays into that conversation of how much is it up to the federal government to provide these? If the federal government says we can't provide it, how much is it up to the state? How much is it up to the county? I mean, you talked about that split that's going to change, and it just goes to show that states that currently maybe have been relying historically on the government, the federal government, to provide those benefits may have to adjust now. It's not just the state of California that's going to see changes to health benefits. It's likely every state in the country. So for California, I mean, a state that we see that, like you said, already has quite a deficit, it's going to be a larger conversation, I think, when it comes to our elections, our local elections for the state of California, of who we elect to be able to balance that budget, the county budget. I mean, it's all we talk about the trickle down. That's what we're talking about here.
Exactly. Multiple collateral effects that we're going to see of this. I know this is something that we've talked about all week. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, why are we still talking about it? This is a big thing. It's going to deal with a lot of people right now. And meanwhile, this might be a small fraction of people at this point. It's going to become a much larger fraction later on. And then it's going to become a state and local issue. So, obviously something that we want to keep our eyes on when it comes into a year where affordability is a huge topic that people are talking about. These are just some of the conversations. But let's put a button in it for today and potentially the week. This has been a very busy week on the national front. A lot of big moves on the Trump administration, some unprecedented moves, plus a televised address. We don't know necessarily what it's going to be about yet, but that's something that we're going to dive into here, Evan. But first, let's take a 2-minute break, reset ourselves, and then we'll come back with a look at some of the national headlines here around the country.